Welcome to the Pitchwerks podcast. I'm Scott McTaggart. Over the last 20 years, I've been a sales rep, a marketer, a manager, an executive, a consultant, and an advisor. This show is designed to give you access to my list of contacts so that you can learn more about how to present your ideas at work and succeed in your career.
Startups and salespeople, marketers and managers from the Epicast Network in Pittsburgh. It's the Pitchwerks podcast.
Every day that I work, I woke up and said, all right, I have this meeting with this neurologist or this patient, or whatever I'm doing. Today might be the day that you realize that there's a gaping hole in your assumptions and you need to quit this project.
Yeah.
But I think that was also my PhD training. You can't make the data do what you want it to do.
Hey everybody, it's Scott. It's Wednesday and it's a Pitchwerks podcast. I am very glad to report that I've got Courtney Williamson of Abililife sitting directly across from me in the studio, and this is going to be a fun ride. Now, a lot of you have someone in your life who has had some sort of medical condition, some sort of a challenge, and you stopped and thought, you know, this person that I know and I love can't be the only one having this problem. I wonder if this is a business. Courtney's going to talk to us about that and a whole host of other different things. I think it's going to be a really good conversation, and I think you're going to like it. Before we jump in, you know I've got to ask you to rate and review this fine program in iTunes. Go ahead, give us a star rating. Tell us why you chose that star rating, and it will help other people that listen to podcasts and like sales and marketing and startups. Help them to find us. I would really appreciate it. You know, it's a little gift. It's just a small gift you might give to me. Let's talk to Courtney. Let's find out about Abililife. Interesting journey, especially with medical stuff. You know how hard that can be. All right, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Courtney Williamson, PhD. We've got Dr. Courtney here in the Epicast studios. Courtney, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm glad you came in. I'm doing pretty good as a result of that.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Abililife is the business.
Yes.
Now, you are a proper educated person, right?
Mm-hmm.
What in the world possesses a proper educated person to start a business that's like a high wire act, right? Like any startup is like, it's an adrenaline inducing sort of a thing. And I have to believe with a PhD, you could at least teach, right?
Right.
So tell me how you got sucked into this zany world.
Yeah, no, that was the plan actually to be a business school professor. So I have a PhD from Carnegie Mellon. From the Tepper School of Business, and I studied organizational behavior. And prior to that, I got my bachelor's from Spelman College, which is historically Black all-women's college. And I studied psychology, and so I just was like, I love academia. That's just what I want to do. But obviously, I had a huge detour.
Yeah.
So my mom actually had Parkinson's disease for 25 years. She passed away about almost 5 years ago. But during the time when she was alive, one of the things that was a really big problem for her was her posture and her balance. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I didn't realize that a part of the disease, inherent in the disease, was this inability to sit up and stand up straight. So she ended up being really hunched over, sitting, standing, walking. And so that negatively impacted her health in a lot of ways.
That's interesting because I didn't understand that. Mm-hmm. I'm not a doctor. I think we've already established that. But I've been around Parkinson's patients. I've never been anywhere near this conversation. I'm not going to ask you why that is because I don't know if anybody really knows the answer to that. I am going to ask, though, what are the health conditions, health problems that result from that bad posture, that inability to sit up straight?
Right. So when you think about Parkinson's, oftentimes people think about one of the main symptoms that you can see, which is a tremor symptom. Mm-hmm. But that's actually one out of about 40 symptoms that can present at any given time. Posture and balance being a cardinal symptom. So what happens when you have Parkinson's or any sort of neuromuscular disease is that your brain is not able to tell itself how to move. So as a result, you might be able to raise your hand like all the way up if your brain is functioning, and that's fine. But with a Parkinson's patient, they might be able to raise it sort of half mast, and they think that it's all the way up. So
really,
she wasn't even aware that
they're getting the sensation that it's all the way up.
Correct.
How about that?
Right, and so that trickles into gait. which is also a huge problem for Parkinson's patients. And then I started looking and noticing that it wasn't just Parkinson's patients. There's about 1.5 million in America, but we actually have about 4 million patients in America that have some sort of neuromuscular disease or some sort of spinal disease like osteoporosis or spinal stenosis or spinal kyphosis that really inhibits them from standing up straight. So if you think about your body, most of people's mass is in their like lower half. So in their sort of bottom area. That's where your center of gravity is, right? So if you're bent forward almost at the waist, your center of gravity is now behind you. So now you're more likely to fall. Imagine someone putting a weight behind you and you trying to walk forward. It's just going to be difficult. You're always going to be rocked back. So you can go to any sort of nursing home, assisted living home, and just see people just outside or out in the hallways, and they're just sort of bent over. And what that does for your quality of life is really terrible. It's difficult to breathe because you're so bent over. Digestion is more difficult. And walking, definitely. And then just not being able to sit and stare someone in the eye when you're talking or reading a book or watching your favorite movie or program. So I just saw this and I said, okay, I did not immediately jump into, let's start a business. Right. I said, well,
that'd be weird if I'm being honest.
It's super weird. Yeah. I said, well, I need to make something for my mom. At that point, I didn't know what it was, but I said, well, Carnegie Mellon has so many engineers. Maybe I can work with an engineering student and make something for her just to help address this problem. And so I got introduced to Project Olympus, which is Carnegie Mellon's startup incubator program, which is phenomenal. It is for any staff, student, faculty that has an idea, high tech, low tech, no tech, and you can go to them and just kind of get started. And I just said, I have this idea, and I heard that people can help you build things here. How can you help me out? Got introduced to a capstone course in the bioengineering department, and then realized that not only could I make something, but then saw the market opportunity. I had to write like a 1-page market assessment just to start getting in with Project Olympus. And then that's when I realized, like, wow, this could be something that not only helps my mom, but helps others.
When you meet somebody, say, out there at these networking events, startup, whatever, and they ask you, what is Abililife? What do you tell them?
So Abililife creates bioengineered products, medical products to improve quality of life for neuromuscular and elderly patients.
Okay.
And what that means is that we have a product on the market now called the Calibrace Plus orthotic back brace. It is a durable medical equipment. And it's a patented product that goes on like a vest, and it lifts your shoulders up and back using our patented pulley tensioning system.
Nice.
And so that realigns your spine.
The investors love that patented pulley system, don't they?
We got our patent this past April. So that was,
congratulations.
Yeah, very cool. It is reimbursed. And we are in 40 states now. 178 clinicians have written prescriptions. Over 20 insurance companies like Medicare, Aetna, Cigna, 50 hospitals, Johns Hopkins, UPMC,
That's
Mayo
crazy.
Clinic, and all of this was happening word of mouth.
Yeah.
So I started the process in 2013, in the summer of 2013.
Okay.
And by that fall, I was assigned 5 students in the capstone course, and we spent the year just kind of tooling around with different materials. I taught them about Parkinson's disease and just from a caregiver's experience. And so by the end of that year, I was able to apply to Alpha Lab Gear.
Yeah.
So I had applied beforehand because I had the idea, and I really just wanted to get some feedback to see, is this a viable business solution? And so I said, we think this might be a good idea, but come back to us when you have like a minimal viable product, and we can kind of see what this might look like. Because at that point I said, I want to make something, but I don't know what it is, but I know what problem it's addressing.
Yeah, and as long as you've got that,
right, then
they start asking like, okay, does this seem like a person who will react to the data?
Right.
And adjust accordingly as they evolve in their understanding of it. And then will they expose themselves to data reliably enough that they will be able to continue that evolution? Will they keep pushing themselves into places where they don't know what's going on?
And that is at the crux of what a PhD student does.
Yeah.
which is I was super comfortable with not knowing, but knowing that I could get data to figure it out. I mean, that's what you do for any project that you're working on as a PhD student and then as a faculty member. So the first thing I did after going to Project Olympus, I went to the National Parkinson's Foundation. They had a local chapter here in Pittsburgh, so I went straight to them.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you...
And then I asked them, I said, can I please come to some of your support groups? I actually had never been to a support group before, even though I guess I could have with my mom, right, but I just was not really something that I was interested in or really knew about. And
now that you've got a different hat on, you feel like an interloper. You feel like you don't belong.
So I mean, I really did like ask for permission, which I guess in hindsight I didn't really need to.
No, I think you did it right.
But I knew that it was more than just me like wanting support. Like I really was trying to build something.
If you're not using it for what it's supposed to be, like if you're actually in there, even if your goal is noble, I think you did it right, considering all the facts.
Well, and hindsight is 2020, and I agree I did it right. But it's so interesting now when I see some of the elderly population, the disabled population are very vulnerable populations, and when you see some of the activities that go on around them, I'm really happy that from the beginning I was very, very transparent and very upfront, because it's crazy how many schemes are around that population just because they're, I guess, easy targets for people who want to do things that are maybe cloaked in noble intentions.
Oh yeah, I mean, hyenas don't go and fight the biggest, strongest animal out there in the jungle, right? They pick off the ones that are easy and they're behind the herd.
So I went in and I spoke with them and I introduced myself and I just basically told my whole story and said I would love to speak with anybody who you would allow me to speak with. And I mean, this community is so welcoming. That's the one thing that I learned about Parkinson's communities. They're welcoming and they're willing to learn new things and experiment with new things. I mean, I think they're some of the bravest people I know. My mom was one of the bravest people I knew because there is no known cure, and now they're working with drugs that maybe were not specifically designed for Parkinson's, but there might be some sort of cross benefit. So they're very open to experimenting and really taking care of their health. So they were very responsive and to this day now people say, aren't you like the brace lady? Because they see me at different support groups. So that's what I did.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
I'll take being the brace lady.
I gathered a ton of data from patients and caregivers. We spoke with over 100 patients and caregivers within that year at Alpha Lab Gear, just to understand what their problems were and what they needed.
So I'm going to ask you something that I'm afraid to ask you.
Sure.
So how far did your mom get to see you go with this?
She passed away 6 months after I founded my company. So I founded it in August 29th, like 2014.
Yeah.
And so she passed away like 6 months after that. So she knew what I was doing. I actually
But you were
told
still
her,
in research phase.
Yeah. I mean, I told her what was going on in 2013. I didn't tell anyone because it was so new. And I was just like, I don't really, I don't want to share this information yet. I'm really building. I don't even know what I'm building yet. But I did tell her. So she knew about a year before anyone else knew.
I ask because obviously, I mean, there's a part of you that said, wouldn't it be nice if, right? And that's why, like I say, I wasn't feeling an overabundance of confidence in asking you that question, but it's part of the story.
It's a part of the story. And I mean, like, you have to understand, like, when I talk to Parkinson's patients, they're amazed at how long she lived with the disease. She had like early onset. So she was around 40 when she had it. Most people were around 65.
Yeah.
And so she, for her to have the disease was so bizarre. Actually, it took a couple of years for neurologists to really diagnose her because she was a young Black woman. And that's typically the opposite of what a Parkinson patient looks like, which is typically like an older white male.
How about that?
So it was like they were just like, there's no way you can have this disease. And so, but she ended up having it. So, I mean, she lived a phenomenal life and she was loved and is still loved. And I'm happy that her legacy lives on in the story, and it's touching people and just giving them a little bit of hope and love.
So now you've got this thing, right? And I have to ask about this because it kind of qualifies as medical equipment.
Yes.
And there's rules about who can buy medical equipment, right?
One thing about me is I love processes.
Oh, yeah?
I love them. I think people should use them more often, particularly as you're a startup and you're scaling. I think one thing that startup founders don't do quickly enough is pivot out of frantic excitement, like adrenaline mode, into like, we are a corporate office, and while we're only 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, one day we're going to be multiples of that, or we're going to be bought into a company that has multiples of that. So you need to operate as soon as possible,
Right.
in a process.
Yeah.
So I started myself out in a process, and I said, what is the hierarchy? The first thing is, do you have a problem? Yes, I personally had this problem. Then the second part was, okay, well, is there someone besides your mom that has this problem? Because that's not a business. That's just,
Yeah.
Then I
It's
answered,
a hobby.
Right, it's a hobby.
Yeah.
I answered that question. Yes. Okay, great. So then what are the government regulations and guidelines? That was the next part. So
And all of a sudden you
Right.
had homework.
I think another thing that people don't do is they don't pick up the phone and ask the direct question. I think people make assumptions and get anxious. So I literally called the FDA.
I'm going to push back on you.
Yeah.
I don't think they get anxious. I think they're overly afraid people are going to steal their idea, right? They're so afraid somebody's just going to swoop in at like 11 hours
so
and 59
silly.
minutes and go.
And listen, unless you have the secret that Apple has been quietly obsessing over to make their product that much better, or like, Amazon or whatever, like you can calm down.
When I began this journey, when you began this journey, we had an outsized expectation of the value of an idea.
Well, I'm going to push back and say, I know that I didn't for mine.
How about that?
I went in, and every day that I worked,
That's really good for you, actually.
every day that I worked, I woke up and said, all right, I have this meeting with this neurologist or this patient, whatever, or whatever I'm doing. Today might be the day that you realize that there's a gaping hole in your assumptions and you need to quit this project.
Yeah.
But I think that was also my PhD training. You can't make the data do what you want it to do. But yeah, I mean, I think that for me, and this is something that I try to walk myself through, particularly when I'm in a high charge situation or there's a lot at stake. I always say, what is the worst that can happen? And not like hypothetically, like write it down. So for me, in 2013, the worst that could have happened was someone says, this is a dumb idea because it's never going to scale, this, that, and and all I do is make one of these braces for my mom, and her life is improved.
Right.
If I could improve her life, it matters to me.
Yeah.
And the worst that happens is I make one of these and move on.
Oh, you know that you and I go to the same church on this
Right.
one, right? I see it, though. And I also think that this is a way that people get their companies taken from them. They get their money taken from them because their emotion is they get led by their nose.
Right.
One of the funniest things that I learned in my adult life is that when you look at the way con men work, when you look at the way cons and scams work, it's about taking advantage of you wanting something and not wanting to wait, not wanting to pay, not wanting to go through, I'll use your word, not going through the process, right? So what happens is somebody comes to you and they say, oh, it seems like you're really passionate about this. I can help you cut the line, right? And again, I'm not saying don't have passion in your business. I am saying that you need to acknowledge the vulnerability that comes along with it. Even if you're a sales rep, right? There is such a thing as being so passionate as to be counterproductive. You have to think about this as a game plan, and you're trying to win the game. And in order to win the game, there are steps to be followed, and you need to know the rules and all the same boring stuff that don't sound like passion, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm giving a speech here.
No,
I'm monologuing on you.
My line that people always say is, "Oh, your mother must be so proud. Let's do business." and there's no real incentive for me, or there's no benefit, or they're trying to take something from me. So it's always really interesting. So, I mean, listen, don't feel nervous about if you ever meet me or interact with me to talk about my mom. That's perfectly fine. But it's so interesting to see how people will try to use what they think is a trigger point for you. What it does is it temporarily like blinds you, and it sort of muddles your senses.
I don't even know if it's that. I honestly don't know if there's thought behind it at this stage. Maybe the first time they brought it up, but maybe not at all. I honestly think there's a very high possibility that they don't think about it the way you think about it. I think there's a checklist of things they think they're supposed to do and say, and they do and say them. And I assume, based on the example, that they're doing business with you in some way, or trying to do business with you in some way, and they haven't been fired from their job yet. Right? So keep doing and saying the things on this checklist. It's like if all of a sudden you got dropped into a new school, like the nightmare you have where like, you're back in high school and there's a test and you didn't study and you can't figure out where your class is, whatever, right? Well, if you're like me, you just follow people, right? And you go like, I don't know, everybody else is going down this hall, I'll go down this hall too, right? I think innately as humans, we just pattern our behavior after somebody else who seems kind of like us,
right? Until
we figure out either why or that it's going to be fine as long as we keep doing it. And that's kind of it. Yeah. Interesting though, right? We both jumped in real quick on this idea though, that it is like this idea of passion and like squishy arguments that open you up to.
Right. Well, okay, here's the thing. Like, am I passionate about improving quality of life for neuromuscular and elderly patients, which is my tagline?
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Am I passionate about responding to my accountant, fulfilling orders, running payroll?
I hear your accountant's lovely, though.
Yes. But
I don't know your accountant. I just got to let everybody in on the joke.
Am I passionate about that? No. There are hygienic things that must be done in everybody's life.
I hear the organizational aspects of your education
I mean, it
coming
literally
out.
is. And so to say that you're passionate, I mean, like you're just, you are like one of those early 2000 rom-coms as like the cheerleaders that like were constantly happy. Like that's not real life. Yeah. So let's just remove that and say, and some days, people say, oh, I wake up every day, I'm so excited. Like we're in Pittsburgh. So the sun starts going down around like 5, okay? And it starts to get darker.
Not that it matters because it was already raining for 4 hours before that.
It's raining. So some days you're going to wake up and be like, I'd love to stay in bed and watch a movie or read a book or go back to bed. But you get up not just because of the passion, but because you know that it's one day closer, one milestone closer to your big goal. Yeah. And so some days, I mean, to me, beyond passion, it's discipline. Yeah. Do you have the discipline to do this? Because passion that's an emotion. It fizzles out. Some days you're not. Today it was raining. You know, I really wanted to kind of stay in, but I didn't. I had things to do. It is right before Christmas, but I have loved to just, put on a Santa hat and had hot chocolate and watched Elf. Probably. But I had things to do today. Yeah. And so that discipline to just kind of just do it. And I think that's what got me through my PhD program. And it's ultimately what's going to grow my company.
I was thinking about what you said about, like how your mom figures in and how people talk about your mom sometimes. And this can be pivoted and squished a bunch of different ways. One of the things that's interesting to me is that it can also be used as a way to take power away from you as a founder. And I guarantee it's happened.
Oh, for sure.
Where someone basically says like, you're not really the person that should do this. You're just the person who like has like a passion play for it or whatever. And you're adorable, but wouldn't it be great if this came from somebody who really studies this, right? Like it is. And in a way, we're talking about passion again, but again, we're talking about passion backfiring. And I promise you that was not like hey, let's talk to Courtney about passion backfiring. But I can see people trying to take away some of your legitimacy by saying, well, this was just a passion thing for you. This is just something you wanted to do because you had a family connection.
I mean, one of the things that I knew very early on, I think probably within the first 6 months of my company, was the amount of cognitive dissonance that I stir up in people.
I need to know what that means. I know what cognitive dissonance means. It's when you have two thoughts that conflict with each other in your same head. I'm trying to figure out how you stir it up in people.
I walk into a room and there's different people, different events, whatever. And I'm introduced, or I introduce myself, and I have more education than most people in the room, if not all, depending on where I am.
Yeah, obviously.
I'm younger than most.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more female than most. I'm a woman and I'm Black. So, and then I've created this thing that's going to help a lot of people. How did you do that? Wait, how? And that happens time and time again. So they're like, this is really awesome. And they love the idea. They just don't love the package that it comes in. And
you mean you?
Mm-hmm. And so the first thing is like, well, how did you figure it out? What did you do? And, I sort of explain the process, like how we're doing here. But then it becomes interesting because at that point they have a decision to make, and I see them struggle with it. And this is where the dissonance comes in.
Okay.
They either accept the fact that this is mine.
Okay.
Or they accept the fact that it exists, but that it belongs to somebody else. And sometimes in their minds, well, maybe it belongs to me. Maybe it belongs to the person she's standing next to. I had this happen to me today, actually, through a text and an email. So that was funny and interesting. But, I oftentimes, for me, I'm very matter of fact. I like seeing that because then I know where to put you. So, Black women are the highest educated. We start the most small businesses in America, and yet we only get 2.2% of funding. The average funding that we get is $39,000 as opposed to our counterparts, which is $1.5 million.
Counterparts as in white
women and white males.
I just want to make sure I know the stats.
Correct.
Okay. So,
so
you're taking males in that number too, is what
correct.
I'm asking. Okay.
So for me, the way that I approach this is, again, sort of like a process. I mean, again, I went to Spelman.
Yeah.
It's all Black women, a phenomenal institution. In fact, we just received a $30 million grant from Stryker, which is a huge medical device company. But listen, when you go to that school, our mantra is a choice to change the world. So you have classes of women that come out every single year, and we know the odds, but we don't care, and we do it anyway. And so for me, it's sad for me to see people in their limited scope, but it doesn't stop me from moving forward. I just think of things in a more creative way. The thing you have to understand is you can't take my gender or my race identity away from the story. And so
100% agree.
So you have I'm a complete person. And one of my friends said to me years ago, she says, you can't live life like it's a waffle where every little piece of your life is a compartment.
Nice.
Life is a bowl of spaghetti and it interweaves. And so that's a part of my process. It's a part of my life. And so, I mean, I get that. There are definitely going to be people who might think a certain way. But we, in all fairness, are in America and you're allowed to think what you would like. But I would hope that your listeners are open-minded. And I hope that anyone that feels sort of marginalized in any sort of way, know that you have to bring that into your story because it just is. And you will be presented with it every day. But it's your job and it's your responsibility to tell your story the way that you see fit and not allow others to put a story onto you. And I think one thing that's so important that I think goes into entrepreneurship when you think about investors and what the role of an investor, this is the same way that I think about people who are wanting to see a better world in terms of gender and race equality.
Yes.
If you have the access, power, resources, what have you, your job is to clear a space and let people who are marginalized come in to tell their stories. You simply are there to clear the space. You are that 800-pound gorilla that's like, I have been endowed with this clout, power, whatever it is, for whatever reason or reasons. And my job is to make sure that you have a platform to do what you need to do. And so when you think about an investor, and you think about raising money, it's not about just the capital. Mm-hmm. It's about, will this person, if they pick up the phone, can they call somebody that will get me that $1 million contract that I need?
Yeah.
You know, can they make an email introduction to getting more capital?
The relationship is
the
key.
Relationships are key.
100. Not only is the relationship key, but it's not about and a lot of people make this mistake. Just because the person has a network does not mean that they use the network.
Correct.
Just because a person has a skill does not mean that they use the skill. So it's not enough to look at somebody's LinkedIn and go, well, that's the person I need because they will do the thing I need. In many cases, at least among investors, they see that as you asking for more than they were expecting to give.
Correct.
So you have to make sure you're doing a little bit of matchmaking and a little bit of, compatibility testing, or else you're going in with an expectation that was never discussed.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, you really have to understand. And I think one of the things with startups is like the more you stick around, the better everything becomes, because people start to see you more and they start to associate more with you and they start to really listen to your story and they start to see your growth, and then they start opening up one door here, a window here, and then you start to really get into a network.
Humans accept things.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
They don't accept things on the first offer.
No one does. Very few people do.
But if you just show up every day, they accept that you will be there every day.
If you show up and you're just there. So one of my favorite sitcoms when I was younger, growing up, was Family Matters. And so Steve Urkel was just so persistent with Laura Winslow. He just wanted her to be his girlfriend so badly. He would come to their house every day, multiple times a day, just because he wanted to be in that family. And so, be like Steve Urkel, but less annoying, I would say, and just show up.
Urkel's the reason I didn't watch that show. But I watched it a few times. I'm not going to say that because they had that, they were ubiquitous there for a while. Yeah. You know who I identify with now?
Who?
The dad.
Oh.
I am the dad.
Yeah.
Right? With the eye rolling, just like.
But he never changed his locks.
No, but he should have.
He should have, but even that goes to show you, even the people who grumble, and even the people who you feel are like the detractors, don't be alarmed about that, because even they will start to say, oh, okay, well, I guess they're still here.
I will take your point in a different direction. I will say that the people who are serious and actually thinking about the merits of working with you are the people who will grumble.
Yeah.
Okay. It is the people that will glad hand you and smile and
those are the worst.
And then, you never hear anything. Like my dad used to say things like, oh, they grinned me to death. Right. Like they just sit there and they just smile and wait for you to leave. Right. Those were the worst meetings in his opinion.
Yeah, for sure.
Because a person who's actually thinking about adopting your thinking is going to experience a certain degree of friction.
Right.
And they're like, wait. Did you say that it's this or it's that? Because if it's this, we're going to have a problem. Like they're actively sussing out, how am I hurting myself by going along with your mindset?
So this is where I like to insert purposeful tension.
Okay.
So I did this recently. I was trying to schedule a trip with some of my friends, and I knew that schedules were kind of weird. So I purposefully inserted some sort of tension. So I sent a text. I was like, hey, let's do this. And then all of a sudden, there were these protests that I knew were there all along.
Right.
It's just that no one wanted to say them.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, definitely bringing some tension along. I think that sometimes people feel like I need to be liked. Not that your dad felt this way, but, you know, when talking about the people who
he
grin.
needed
but like,
to know where he could win and
Right.
know where he could lose,
And then
because
move
time
on.
is not
Time is-
being
exactly.
reissued to you. If
So- and knowing that, which is very smart,
right.
purposefully put something in your conversation that is like inducing tension.
Oh,
And
he was the king of it.
Right.
He called it win fast, lose fast.
Exactly.
It is like it's a time honored sales tradition where if it feels like it's not moving and they just sit there and wait for you to leave, you go, okay, great. So I'll drop the contracts. And everybody goes, whoa.
Right. Exactly.
It's like, well, you haven't said anything negative, so I had to assume that you just wanted to do the deal.
Exactly. You want to make sure you do that, and people get anxious about that. And I think that's the biggest thing is if you cut to the chase like right away.
Courtney Williamson, Abililife. That's ABILILIFE.com. You can't buy it online, but if you've got a doctor who's been paying attention, they can write you a prescription. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, that is all the time we have this week. Thank you to Courtney. Thank you to everyone at Abililife. This was very informative. I hope you were able to take some notes on this. Like I said at the top of the show, we see these opportunities. We see that there's that one little thing that could help somebody's life, and you have to stop and wonder, like, you know, should I be the person who puts this two and two together and solves this problem for, you know, some population of people? If that's you, you know, I think Courtney is a great model for you to follow, and I'm really glad she came into the studio. In other news, as always, we're going to get back to work on another episode of this fine program. You know that it's every Wednesday morning. If you subscribe to it, you get it before everyone else, which is not the best of bragging rights, but it's something. We will catch you next week. Take care of yourselves in the meantime.
The Pitchwerks podcast comes to you from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a production of the Epicast Network and McTaggart, LLC. Engineering and production by Buzzy Torek and Nick Miller. For more information, show feedback, and ad sales, visit pitchwerks.com. pitchwerks.com. On social media, find and follow the show on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram using that same brand name, pitchwerks.